Welcome to Magicians Talking Magic. My name is Ryan Joyce.
And my name is Ramazing. And thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode 150.
Wow, that's congratulations. That's so fun. 150 episodes. We're so glad you're tuning in and listening to us. We hope you've listened to all 150. If you haven't, go back and start at the beginning.
Ooh, don't. Maybe don't.
Don't. Yeah, don't. Better not. We've learned a lot in 150 episodes.
Maybe start at 50. Just listen to the 100.
That's a good call.
There you go.
That's a good call. We are glad you're here. This is a good episode. Lots to chat about. This has been an intense month.
We've been
stuff and things.
We've been really busy. And if you've been tuning into the podcast, which probably you have if you're listening to this, you'll have seen there's been so many various interviews. We've been bouncing back and forth between interviews, but we realized 150 was sneaking up on us. So we figured we had to do a special update episode. And we're going to be talking all about lessons learned, returning to live performances, because this is the biggest news for us both. But before we dive into the actual subject of the week, the topic of the week, we have tons of news and updates. First things first, today is a special day, not only episode 150, but it's also episode 151. We are doing a double episode drop. We've got Lost in the Shuffle. Just last week, I recorded an interview with Sean Farquhar and John Ornoy. They are the two behind Lost in the Shuffle and the Kickstarter campaign, which has really exceeded its goals. Just as we recorded last week, they had just hit their goal. And now if you check out the Kickstarter page, it's just skyrocketing. So that whole interview is also going to be coming out later today too.
That's great. I just saw Sean up at the FISM North American Championship of Magic. So I wish I could have joined in on that discussion. Sorry, I had meetings and meetings and meetings, but I can't wait to hear that episode myself. Looking forward to it.
And I did my best because I realized they're doing a lot of the same interviews right now. I did my best to ask the classic Magicians Talking Magic questions. I talk about the movie, but then I asked them more things about high level magic. And wow, Sean has some of the best answers you'll ever hear.
He knows his stuff. That is for sure. So we wish them all success on the documentary. It's also a busy week in magic. This whole week, of course, is National Magic Week, something established way back in the 60s by the Society of American Magicians. It was originally started the year after Houdini died with Houdini Day. And I think in like 1938, it was officially recognized as National Magic Day, and Houdini was there to kick it off and everything. So that developed in the 60s. I believe it was 61 or 62 or 63, something like that, with a huge festival in New York City that finally got it proclaimed. And there's actually proclamations, I guess, that you can see on the Society of American Magicians websites of various cities around the US that have established that. And Cam last year also wants to officially make sure that this is recognized in North America, not just in the USA. So we think this is a really great thing. So celebrate Magic Week this week. And we've got a couple ways you can do that.
We have there's so many things going on here, and Joyce, I don't even know where to start, but I guess you have a ton of stuff coming up with the Cam Jam. I can't believe that you have returning feature guest
Chip Romero. Yeah, this was our most popular event last year, Cam Jam. This is free. Everybody around the world, you can tune in. It's October 27th. I'm sorry, my notes say the wrong date. October 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You go to cammagic.org to RSVP for free. And I encourage you all, we'll leave links, of course, in the description, but Chip just sent a image last night that is now up on the blog post, and it is a Doug Henning journal entry that he's going to specifically talk about tomorrow night or whenever you're listening to this, October 27th. Now, this is live only, so you can only tune in during that time. Members of CAM can rewatch this later on cammagic.org, but do tune in because it's free. We've got a ton of people already RSVP'd, so Chip is just awesome. It's going to be a great night. Of course, hosted by Greg Prue and myself, and there'll be so many magicians there, and we're going to be getting a peek at some history that's both Canadian but also super magical. So going to be great.
I feel bummed that I can't make it because I have to perform tomorrow night. However, I'm performing in Hamilton, so it feels perfect.
Yes, that's great. Callback. Yes. course, Doug Henning. We saw his, what was it, the plaque from Master University, and
Yeah,
last time.
his diploma on the wall, which is the weirdest thing to see that on. I mean, we grew up in Hamilton and in the area, and to see that diploma, like, why would someone have? Oh my gosh, what a weird, strange, cool piece of Hamilton history in Chip Romero's house that we're all watching live streamed on the internet. It was a weird time.
It's going to be great. So make sure to tune in, cammagic.org. It is free RSVP now, and you'll get the link sent to you in your email. Also, the 28th, Music and Magic. We've chatted about this, and last week's episode was with Marco Chera and Nick Wallace. Marco is from Tafel Music, and this program is debuting on the 28th, and there's various options for digital passes. It's very affordable, like including like a basic pass where you can just watch it once and it's very affordable, or you can like watch it over the course of a week. They've really gone all out and made sure this is accessible for everybody, including their season holders. Like you can buy a whole season, et cetera, et cetera. But for us, definitely check out Tafel Music, TAFELMUSIK.org to get your pass and tune into this. It's an hour concert, and for full details, make sure to go back and listen to last week's episode, which is a wonderful, popular episode. So we know a lot of you have listened to that or watch on YouTube, of course. It's going to be great. It's a really unique program, so check that out.
And then if you're in Southern Ontario, if you're in the area, we have our Laura Magic Lounge is doing its second show ever. And by the way, we got to see a couple of our podcast listeners this past weekend at Laura Magic Lounge too. So shout out to Al and Colin who came out to the show. Triple snaps. That was so much fun to be able to see and perform live and see friends that like Colin, whom we've known now for probably a couple of years, right? But never met face to face. So that's the fun part about the podcast, is we get to hopefully along the way meet y'all. So we really pushed the limits on our bedtimes, I guess, because we did the show as a late show, and you have to go for a drink afterwards, right? You're all full of the excitement after the show. You kind of want to get the firsthand feedback. But my favorite part is always when someone pulls out the magic tricks, and Colin had a great couple of magic tricks to share at the end of the night, which is awesome way to finish off like a whole magical performance. But it was great. But if you want to check out, if you are in the area and you are curious to check out the Allure Magic Lounge, you can find tickets, information about this at magicfestival.ca. Absolutely. We'd love to have you there. And hopefully we will see the return of the Magic Lounge next year as well. So be sure to subscribe to the mailing list on magicfestival.ca as well. So, and on that note, I should say I attended last night's Sid Lorraine, the Toronto Magic meeting, and hosted by Colin and Keith Brown. And it was a real fun Halloween welcome. They had Nick there to chat about all the things that he's been doing, including his Wonderland performances, which is super fun. And he presented that same piece of magic live to everybody that he presented for us at the bar afterwards, and it was a lot of fun. So hey, today is a great chat. Actually, before we dive into the chat, I totally forgot, and I'd feel terrible if I didn't even mention, but two-time podcast guest Joe Diamond lectured for the Kitchener-Waterloo Magic Society. We had guests from Magicians Talking Magic join in. We had people from the Toronto, so many different people joined in, but I have to say that Joe is one of the best lecturers that you can get, not just at the Halloween season, but anytime. He's teaching you solid proof, easy to do methods with a great story and everything like that. He's willing to take all the questions. Plus, he managed the whole virtual meeting himself. He added the intermission. He felt the room. He knows what's up. He knows what's going on. He's one of the best out there. If you're a Magic Club and you're trying to like book up your roster or something, Joe Diamond is a solid get for a lecture. Plus, got to check him out on Scam Nation. There's a lot of cool material on there. And I even took something from his lecture and applied it to Allure Magic Lounge this weekend, which is what we're going to be talking about all this week. Absolutely. Yeah, this was a big kind of, 2 years is the longest I've ever gone since I was in high school. Before that, even performing live on stage. So this was an interesting not experiment, because obviously performed before, but return to stage. Like we all are as good as our last show, they typically say.
And so 2 years is a long time. So we're sort of left with all these question marks, like, how's it going to go? What's it going to be like? Is this going to work? And it was a real hit to hit the stage and return. And we want to share with you some of the re-lessons, some of the lessons, some of the tips, the strategies that we went through to be stage ready and dust off the stage rust. So we're going to.
Yeah, because a lot of people are talking about all the benefits of virtual magic right now. And we want to talk about some of the 5 biggest takeaways performing live yet again. And the number one thing and these don't really actually have any set order. We kind of, as you know, we write our notes out, we freestyle these things, but the first thing that we wrote down was timing. And for me, I was doing a ton of virtual shows, and I really dove into Grimazing level 7 wizard character. I came up with a lot of new jokes and lines, but I never had a sense of any of the timing. I would never break for a laugh or anything. You could see people chuckle on the screen, but you just keep delivering and going. And even some of the live shows that I've been back to, the audiences have been so bizarre, I guess, like a little too interactive with talking back and forth, that it wasn't the classic theater vibe. When we performed at Allure Magic Lounge just on the weekend, and I started delivering my lines and I got the laugh, I realized, oh, wow. And I quickly changed up everything. I was live editing and removing lines because I realized that I was filling those laughs were now filling out the time and everything too. But it felt really good to know those jokes were working, but I had no sense of that in a virtual show, to be honest. So the timing was a huge, huge thing. The other big thing performing live, and I think doing virtual and also podcasting sometimes when you listen to the podcast, we might be really excited about what we're talking about, talking a little too fast, too much energy. And I remember looking at you backstage too. I was anxious. We were anxious. We were very anxious. And I know I hear this a lot now, is just slow down and enjoy it, which was, I think, the perfect thing. And then we started the show, and it was so easy to enjoy that show. It was so easy to enjoy that show. Yeah,
I was definitely repeating that backstage. So I appreciate the reminder. Yes, slow down. And because it's anxiety. It's, your nerves are on all fires, just firing on all cylinders, and it's a lot of senses being bombarded. So just that reminder of slowing down and just being present is super important. So that was a really great tip. And you're right, it is very different from the virtual experience. Like, the virtual experience is a one-way communication, where this is two-way, and you've got to stop and respect the audience's reactions and fuel that as well. All those strategies that we do as performers.
Like, I understand a lot of us that do virtual shows, we say it's interactive, and a lot of people get to take part because we have to sell it as such. However, you're in a virtual show, you're still talking to the audience. When you're in a live show, you're talking with the audience. It's very much, you're on the journey together, and there's so much energy in the room. It feels so great.
Yeah, and like the room that we were in was super fun. Like, every room obviously is different, and that's part of like the atmosphere that is created for both you, the performer, and the audience. So, like, one of the best case scenarios, for example, for Allure Magic Lounge, it's like a small little space. It holds 70 people comfortably, kind of a thing, and like ideal. But 70 people in a room that fits 600 is wretched. And so it definitely, there's situations involved, and in our case, we were sort of presented with the best case scenario. It was a fun vibe in the room, and it's easy to play off that vibe when it's just floating in the air so effortlessly. But when you do that with 600 size room, and there's 1/3 the capacity, it's obviously a little bit more difficult. So these are all the things that come back to our flood to our memory.
Yeah.
It's that you don't experience with Zoom, because the room is just what it is.
So. The next thing, and this is the biggest lesson that I learned over the weekend. Because I also did it as another performance too. I was performing at my first market back in over 2 years. And I always pack a ton of material, because you feel that out. Like, what's going to happen? Do I get to do a show? Am I just doing some card tricks? All these sorts of things. And I realized I always pack new stuff too. And also, there's always the thing before the show starts, those few days. For some reason, it happens the 3 days before the show starts. I'm going to throw in something new. I'm going to throw in two things new. I'm going to do everything I've never done before and all these things. But I really learned invest in the routines you already perform. Put the time in. And when I say like invest, it's like practice those routines, rehearse those routines, which we're going to dive into even deeper, but rewrite the script again. I've done ambitious card routine. I've got kind of 2 points on this. So I've done ambitious card routine for my whole life, right? And I've rewritten that script every single year I do it. And the newest advancement, I'm going to share this with the listeners now, is the pop-up move that everybody does where you bend the card and you put it in the middle and it goes shaboink to the top, classic David Blaine stuff.
Yep.
So I've always done it. You point it or people do a hair and they pull it up. I now do the entire trick where the spectator, they tap a tap at the top. That's not one tap, that's two taps. And it comes up to the top, I promise. So the first time their card comes up to the top, another time and possibly it comes up to the top. Then I bend it. Now they go tap-a. And on the second tap, that bent card comes up to the top and they did all the magic. And that's just added so much more power into the trick because the big feature of that trick used to be putting the card in my mouth. And that's never going to happen again. So that was the one. Yeah.
There's some certain aspects that are going to be lost or changed, maybe temporary, maybe permanent. I'm not determining myself, but definitely even in the stage setting, for sure. There's like new aspects of live performance. We will go a little bit more in detail on that very soon, but COVID cautious, I guess, is right. The way to look at it.
Yeah. There's some of those things that we have to think about. And then back to investing in the routines you already perform. When I was performing at the market specifically, the two highlight tricks for everybody that was watching when I'd have a huge crowd was a change bag and a coloring book. But my coloring book is a Spider-Man. There's a Tenyo version. And I was trying to find it last night online where you can buy this. You can't find it anywhere anymore. And I got it from Ryan Edwards. He was at a magic convention, I think in Vegas. He saw it and picked it up for me. He said, I thought this would be great for you, which is kind of cool. Cool story behind the prop. So I call that routine my origin story, the Spider-Man comic book. And it's the same thing as a coloring book. And I've mixed it with Danny Orlean's presentation of the coloring book, where how he gets the children involved and the families actually too, by grabbing colors off their clothes, throwing them, scribble, scrabble, erase, if you are familiar with that sort of stuff. But I really leaned into those, and throughout the day, because I performed for 6 hours, that coloring book and that change bag evolved into two. They were already polished routines. They're simple, easy to do routines, but they became like staple routines now. They were my routines, like very much my routines, and they very evolved. And the storytelling even applied more to level 7 wizard. So invest in those routines you perform, because we're going to get into this in a little bit second. But once you know, the hardest part about magic is the muscle memory of everything. So if you can know that, it allows you to dance in the script and the pattern of the whole trick and introduce a new joke or line, which you got to do this weekend too.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that routine muscle memory is key. Like you can't walk out on stage and be thinking about what you're supposed to do next. That's not show ready.
Right.
Yeah, that great lessons, definitely. And of course, the other one, we ran into this massively as well. Anything can happen on stage and before and such. There's lots of variabilities with live performances, and that makes it enjoyable. It also increases, the stress perhaps for some, but it also really can help expand your skills as an entertainer on stage, being able to cope and to interact and to be able to leverage those errors however you make that work. And typically, sometimes those can be the best new show lines, the best new jokes, the best new influences on your routine. So keep an open mind when things go crazy.
Yeah, anything can and will happen on show days. You always have in your mind imagining what it's going to be like, but you're only under so much control. And this is where you have to be really agile and everything. And that's where preparedness comes into play. And, each time you go through one of these experiences, it's even bizarre, Joyce, because you've been doing this for how long? Live performances, and you'll run into a new scenario that you've never experienced before, and anything can and will happen. And I know in the virtual space, I feel like there's a limited amount of things that anything can happen there. In a live show, there's a wild amount of even talking to you off podcast, the stories behind the scenes that you have dealt with, so many ridiculous things can happen. And it's all about being agile and how you can work around those things, because in the end, the show must go on as always.
It's absolutely the truth. Absolutely the truth. And yep, I'll go jump in.
I think this is the appropriate time. We should have done it at the top, but huge shout out to Sam Pierce,
Absolutely.
who is an essential tool to Allura Magic Lounge. Not a tool person, but he was there to help keep us uplifted and positive. He's also a tech genius. Well, he comes from the same experience and knowledge of you. You're both Paul Reuter
Yeah.
trained.
That's right. Absolutely. And it was good to chat with Sam also about Paul. We go back and listen to that episode, probably 25 episodes back. Paul was a dear friend and also put both of us on the road for many years. So lots of lessons learned in show creation, production, all of that. So Sam really helped us out. We were sort of thrust into some impossible situations on the weekend that were unexpected, and he definitely saved us. And it was just a fun night. So we really do thank Sam so much for all his efforts. And the rehearsal process about coming back on stage, I'd love to hear how you did it. I'll just ramble quickly here about a couple points on what I did. My show, of course, like I look at myself as a performer with a show. It's been a show for 20 years. And that show for me is very scripted and very thought out. And I'm going to use the word polished, not in the ego sense, but that's like the goal that we're all trying to get to, is to have this polish on our shows. And the polish only comes after doing it a crap load of times, just laying it out there. And so my big fear at the beginning was like, am I going to remember all of the polish? Am I going to remember all of those hits and those notes and those details? And so that's where having a script is essential for magicians, just in general. If anyone ever tells you they don't think a script is important, smile and nod and go write your script, because most of us are not improv wizards and geniuses. And when you add anxiety onto all of this and you're standing in front of a room, it's just inevitable that you're going to have moments of blank. And the only way to be fully prepared for that is to have a script, because your script is like your muscle memory for the tricks. So like you're going over that. I suggest doing it, like having it accessible on your phone. Like we do everything in Google. And so if you're waiting in line, you've got 5 minutes, just that act of looking at it and reviewing it carves another path in your brain of all of that stuff that you've got to go through. So the more you can absorb yourself into it, the better. And I also highly recommend, you can't just say it in your head. You got to say these stuff out loud, and you've got to do the timing, and you've got to do it as if you're actually on stage. And be prepared to chop your script, start running through it out loud. And if it doesn't feel right, if something feels weird, do you think it's going to feel any better on stage? So change that. And you can't be as concise live as you can be with script, and your script can really pack the punch. So look at your script as an ongoing evolution, and don't be afraid to cut. Don't be afraid to cut, for sure. And if you're using music, I like to use music a lot because it's like you get to ride off of the emotions of that music that's being built and all that effort and behind it, and it finds something that matches the tone and tempo of your routine, and it can elevate it, just brings it up to the next level without the magician, quote unquote, having to do any quote unquote extra work. And so music is something, if you're timing to music, you've got to run through that whole thing. And I highly recommend you run your routine with your props and do it without the props. Like, just have this muscle memory before you walk on stage, so that you can rest assured that you've done the most that you can do. Because that's the worst thing, is to stand up there and forget your lines and go, shh, I should have practiced this more. You've really got to understand the material at a level that's familiar, or better. So muscle memory is important for script, just as well as your props and your actions. And one last little thing, two things I want to, well, three. Rehearse at different times of day. I would do it first thing in the morning, like literally holding my coffee in my hand and pressing play on music, setting the coffee down and going, and do it in the afternoon, in the evening. Do it when if you have the ability, if you all of a sudden feel stress or an anxiety, that's the perfect time to do it, because that's more closely resembling the state of mind you're going to be in on stage. So you really dedicate a lot of your resources before your show to trying to do that routine under an enormous amount of different variables. And it's hard. You'll never be able to fully resemble that stress in your comfort of your own home that you will be on stage. So if you find a moment of opportunity where that anxiety peaks in, how about press play and do your routine right there on the spot. And then finally, I'll just say muscle memory, or sorry, a costume practice with all of your prop management. And, this was new for us as well, because with COVID there's things you've got to be prepared for. And so had you not known that you should have a mask in your left pocket, and I had to move my mask to a different pocket because it was loaded with something else for another pocket. And so if I didn't prepare for that, it might not have been as effortless as it was the day of. So you really got to do everything as if it was showtime. And then finally, I will say, find someone. If it's a new routine, I opened with a new routine on the weekend. And if that's the case, find someone that you can present that to on Zoom or in person, because you're going to get nervous. You're going to mess it up. It's going to be awful. But like, that's show number one, like doing that in that situation is show number two. So the next time you do it, it's going to be show number 2 or 3. And without embarrassing yourself in front of a live audience, you get that anxiety of doing it one-on-one with a friend that you know and trust, who will provide you with hopefully some good feedback. So there's a boatload of tips there from someone who just went through all this myself. I think is essential for hitting the stage for the first time, or hitting the stage for the 10,000th time with a 2-year interval. So a couple rehearsal tips.
How I've always rehearsed, and I do it very much the same, except I'll tell you about the big transition move that I'm making now in my performance, and that's really in the polish. And that goes back to kind of the whole idea of investing into your routines, investing into the routines that you already know, if that's what you want to do with your magic, of course, because we're all here for some of us are just hobbyists. We just enjoy magic too. And I think that's actually the reality too. I love being a professional magician, I want to have a professional polished show, but also I enjoy the hobby of magic, getting a magic book and reading it. But when it comes to rehearsing, I set up everything in my basement, or sometimes in this office space right here. And I'll try to set up the props as I'd imagine it in the space, go through full jacket dress rehearsal. I say my lines out. I say my lines out nonstop all the time. If I take the dog for a walk by myself, I'll be saying them out loud, kind of like gently, softly a little bit, but I still say them out loud, because there's a huge difference instead of saying it in your mind. Then once you start saying them out loud too, you'll get gifts of new jokes immediately, or new lines that you can put in. It just comes so much faster. When I drive to the show, I'm saying my script just on repeat. And I look at the clock too on the car to see about my timing. So like, because you always kind of guess, right? And that you get better at this. Like, is a routine 4 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Is it 6.5? Is this whole set 12? Is it 13? Am I going to hit 8? What's it going to be like? So you just you riff through it and look at the whole clock. In the past, I've never really traditionally written out my scripts. They've always just been in me, and I've always memorized them, because I've only ever done the same. I think I only do about the same 15 bits. I do about a solid 15 bits, and that's a mix of card tricks, some stage routines, and some festival magic. I think there's about 15 core routines. So I kind of remember those, but I did learn when we started coming back after pandemic, I've forgotten a lot of the scripts. I remember my virtual show scripts, and they changed. So I now wanted to start writing them out and kind of document those changes and things. And then so I did go through the practice of writing out the script. Plus, with the podcast, we do a lot of writing for the notes and everything. So I'm more in the habit of doing a lot of writing. I've been doing more journaling too. So just the habit of writing out the script, it makes it more complete. And it is a great, you can go back to that, change it. And also, if you're not remembering a certain part, bold or highlight in your Google Docs so that when you're driving, don't use your phone and drive. Say you need to just check the keywords, you can see them really fast. So there's so many tools there, but I think it is about investing in the rehearsal, because if you want to be a professional or a really great magician and have a great presentation on a trick, it's the same as an athlete. They're not just going to go run a 5K or a 10K or whatever tomorrow. You got to train and build up to that too.
Yeah, it's very true. And this is the best time to do that because the holiday season is ahead. And most of us are going to be starting to book these live events, hopefully, with more frequency. So now is the time to start. If you've got, well, any time is the time to start, but now is definitely a good head start for getting that started back in your muscle memory.
One thing too, actually, to add into the rehearsal mix, see if you can do your performance. See if you can go for a quick run or do a workout or an exercise, exert yourself, and then do your show. Because sometimes the show has a big, fast load in. You're straight up exhausted, change your clothes super quick, you're a sweaty hot mess, and you have to go out there and perform, and you're in that shaky mode. So can you perform in that? Or I was performing at that market, 6 hours of magic through the day. Can my energy be the same in the morning, in the middle of the day, and at the end of the day? So I'm grazing all the way through. It's a lot of endurance.
Yeah, it sure is. That's a long performance time.
I know it was too much. It was a little too much.
So actual showtime here. Let's sort of riff on some thoughts here. The one thing I'll start with is that the rapport that you have with the audience trumps all of the effects that you're about to do. So establishing that rapport is key, and that happens within the first 30 seconds to a minute of your show. So if you had to dedicate a lot of effort now, I would spend it on your opening and establishing yourself and endearing yourself with the audience. That said, I did a new opener and was totally terrified on the weekend because it's always stressful adding new material because you can't really understand where all that, like you said in the very, very top, the timing is going to land. It's one thing to present something in rehearsal and be prepared for it, but until it's actually been presented in front of an audience, it's hard to know the spacing and the atmosphere and the all those little details.
So many questions. Will people even get this joke? Does it make sense? Is it going to hit the way I want? Is it a joke that I just want the one person to go, ha ha? What is it? Is it working the way you want it to work?
Yep. We always, on tour, we always said 3 days we could get a new routine to good, and then it would take a lifetime to get it polished. And I think that's a pretty fair way of looking at it, because the first show is the test. The second show is and third show are the improvements upon that first foundation. And really, by the third performance, the routine should be improving. Like, you should always be aiming to improve the routine. So I can't wait we've got one more show this weekend. I've got some changes based on what I did for my opener that I'm looking forward to implementing based on feedback. And that's another aspect that we include in this showtime is you've got to hopefully people there that you can trust to give you positive feedback and negative feedback. Or not negative, but constructive, pardon me, is more important. If there's someone that's there to give feedback, I actually typically say, like, I don't need anything positive. I just need to know the feedback.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, it helps to hear the positive, but really the only thing that's going to make me better as a performer is that constructive stuff. Let them know it's a safe zone to give you criticism.
I remember my musician buddy, he would always come up to me. He drums for this band Caribou now and has his own band, Pick a Piper. But after the show, he would come to me and go, where was it flat?
Oh, that's great.
He would just ask straight up.
Yeah, that's great. And of course, you don't ask that to everyone. Like you wouldn't want to ask it to people that don't understand magic, or you're just
Shows
setting
and
yourself up for hearing terrible advice. So make sure that that person is someone that you trust and has some kind of understanding about the industry. That's great advice. I've always been, this is something we chat, like I don't new material. I hate it. It sucks. We all typically hate it. It's so much stress. But the joy of landing something is well worth the stress. But we would chat about this with people on the ship and things, where they threw new material into their show. And it was always in the middle.
Yeah.
You don't want to start with it. You want to like land the plane, right?
Yeah.
And have a good opening, and then and make sure everyone has established that rapport, and then somewhere in the middle, try your new bit, and hopefully it's a win.
I finished with something new, which was a scary space. However, going back to what I said about it was a Joe Diamond thing, and it's a solid proof bit. And I rehearsed it a lot because it was important about scripting for that. It's very important. But that's also one of those ones where you did it once and you're like, okay, I can't wait to do this 100,000 more times.
Yes, that was a great bit too. We have 3 little points here for COVID, because COVID time is different. Not sure exactly how long these will last, but here's some suggestions for sure. And we already sort of touched on the one, that's have a mask already in your pocket, ready to go. And it just signals to the audience that you're respectful of what's going on. And so anytime I leave the stage, I pop that thing on. We also had sanitizer and hand wipes at the front of the stage as well. So that just the bottom line is just being thoughtful and respectful about the audience's concerns. So
yeah, one thing that when I was performing at the market, I know that it was very interactive what I was doing, and it's also like a group again. You could see who would be uncomfortable and kept their space. That's okay, because usually in a group you're like, come in closer.
right.
And also always asking people when you do something, is that okay? Just asking their consent. Just an easy peasy thing.
Yeah, we didn't run into any objections or anything on the weekend, but I sort of am preparing for that to be something of the future. I feel like we might have more declines for people to come on stage in the future. I'm curious to see how this all unfolds.
So from me being in various venues so far and performing in places, I have found that if people are out and about at these things, they seem to be pretty okay, pretty open to being out there and doing some things. I did meet some people at the festival that commented they had some anxiety seeing all those people. But I mean, at that festival, they had more people than they expected, which was a great positive thing. And there were thousands of people that came through there.
Yeah, it was intense. And awesome.
It was intense. So, I mean, anxiety from that for sure. And I know if I was a guest at the event, I would have that anxiety because there's also only one porta potty, which is unfortunate. But I had a tent, I had a home base, so I felt safe with my things. And I know that was the big difference. Plus, I was on as grimacing. But yeah, being aware and sensitive that whatever you believe in COVID, not everyone else believes in COVID kind of thing. And that's okay. And that's totally fine. But if you can have a great conversation about magic, horror movies, maybe monsters and Allura, maybe a craft beer,
right,
then do that.
Absolutely. Well, this is our lessons, our big takeaways from hitting the stage and returning. We'd love to know if we didn't answer any questions that are on your mind. We'd love to hear those questions. You can do that in Discord. We've got links in the description. And if you want to share some tips and advice, I know all of our Discord fans and followers would be very interested in hear that as well. So check us out in Discord. I think
I'm going to be biased too. I'm going to be biased, and I think we have the best magic Discord out there. We have some really thoughtful magicians. We're sharing cool ideas, and I know Discord is still kind of a new thing. It's becoming a new thing, but I think this week Facebook is changing their name or something. I don't know what's going on. So if you're switching up your social media game, checking out Discord, check out Magicians Talking Magic. Safe space to ask any question about magic. Anything, whether you're new, old, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because magic, as we know, there's so much information out there. I think next to cookbooks, it's the number one self-published industry for books. So think of all that knowledge. We can't know all of it. So it's a great place to share all of our shared research and tips and advice. So join the Discord. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube if you're watching this episode. Check out Sean and John's episode later today too, which is Dynamite, episode 151, double release day. And check out our merch on Redbubble.
We're currently posing, if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast app, we are posing our t-shirts. Well, we really appreciate you being here. We loved your feedback. Join us in Discord, all of that. Subscribe on YouTube. Gosh, this is going to be hopefully a great season for all of us. So let's get those rehearsal hours in.
Ooh, one last thing. We figured out our next book club. We figured out the next book club. We're doing Carl Falv's Self-Working Mental Magic. So if you want to get in that, this is an affordable book club to dive into. I've already read the book. Oddly enough, that trick that Colin shared with us, the originator comes from the Falv's book.
Oh, it was so good.
Look at that. So this is a great time to join the Discord. But thank you so much for listening to episode 151.
My name is Ryan Joyce.
My name is Grimazing.
Shablosm.
Tidoozle.
Meow. Roar.